Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the ITE-ANZ webinar for this afternoon. The topic is road signing principles. Solve it with signs, it's so simple. I hope it is simple. It probably isn't quite as simple as all that. My name's David Nash. I'm the Secretary of the ITE-ANZ, and I'll be your moderator today. So welcome to everybody who's here. Firstly, I'd like to do an acknowledgement of country. In the spirit of reconciliation, the ITE-ANZ acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. We acknowledge and respect the Treaty of Waitangi and Maori as the original people of Aotearoa, New Zealand. In case you don't know much about the ITE, ITE is an international organisation. We're a small part of that in Australia and New Zealand. Most of the ITE actually happens in North America. And new members are always welcome, of course. I'd like to thank our sponsors. You can see all of our sponsors listed on this slide, and they're very generous with their support to help us run these sorts of webinars for no cost. So, around to today's presentation, we've got two presenters today to talk about road signing principles, Tuan Nguyen and Robert Morgan. They're going to alternate between them as to what they're going to say, so I'll introduce both of them to you straight away. Tuan is a traffic engineer and accredited senior road safety auditor. He has more than 20 years of experience in traffic engineering and road safety. He worked at both local government and state government levels, where he was involved in leading the development of policies, updating guidelines and standards. Tuan is the lead trainer for Traffic Engineering Fundamentals, Signs and Lines, and the Road Safety Auditor training course run by Safe System Solutions, which is where he works. But importantly, he's the chair of the Australian Standards Committee, the MS-12 committee, which is responsible for Australian Standard 7842, which is the Australian version of the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, or everything has to have an acronym, so MUTCD. Tuan also is a lecturer at Swinburne University in Transport Engineering. Rob Morgan is a road safety engineer and traffic engineer based in Melbourne. He's been the principal author of several national and state guidelines, including the original road safety audit guidelines. He's been a member of the same committee, the MS-12 committee in Australian Standards, for, would you believe it, 40 years. That's a fantastic amount of time that he's been involved in this. And one of his major contributions was the development of the parking control signs back in the 1980s, and also leading a review of direction signs in 2019. So welcome to both of our presenters. Just a bit of housekeeping, you're automatically muted, so make as much noise as you like in the background, we can't hear you. If you've got any technical problems, send them through via the chat. But if you've got questions for the presenters, put them into the Q&A window, which is there at the bottom of your screen. So over to our two presenters. So I'll hand over now to Tuan, who can start the session.
Thank you, David. Just testing the technology. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, all good.
Okay, I will share my screen. Can you see the screen I just shared, David? Just want to check, making sure. Thank you. Yeah, hello everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to the webinar session. And yeah, I should say thanks to the ITE as well for the opportunity. You have introduced both Rob and I, so I won't introduce myself again. So we get straight into it. So yeah, today's webinar is about road signing principles. Solve it with signs. It's so simple. It is quite a interesting topic, and a topic that I been working with for a number of years. And when I first started as a traffic engineer, I never knew that there's so much information and there's a bit of science and engineering behind it. You know, for me, at the very beginning, I thought, oh, just a science, let's just put them out there. But yeah, look, there's a bit of principle and standards and guideline about it, which we will kind of touch on. It's a very big topic, so we won't have time to look at everything. But Rob and I, we will be sharing some of the common issues, and we also have links and information on where you can find more information about these. So in recent time, a lot of people ask me, do we still need road signs? You know what I mean? In particular with the smartphone that more or less tell you exactly where you want to go, and all the other internet information. However, what I found is there's still a need for having road signs out there. In particular, you know, Google, a lot of the time, they don't tell us the local content information. In particular, you know, restrictions on our road network. I mean, the picture at the bottom right there is the famous Montague Street Bridge in Melbourne. For those who know, there is even a website dedicated to it in terms of how many times it gets hit. And I have a theory. I mean, I don't know. I haven't got a way to verify it, but those trucks and high vehicles hit the bridge. Probably the driver is following the Google Maps, and Google said that let's go that way, and they just go without realizing that there is a height limit on it. And in terms of emergency situations, there are also times where Google won't know and will not be able to give you the relevant information. There is also legal requirements on some of the signs that we use on our road network, which we will touch on later. And road signs are good to provide warning and information to drivers and road users. So there's a lot of benefits. Notwithstanding what I've just said, road sign cannot solve everything. Sometimes we, as engineers, we face with a problem, and because of various reasons, mainly budget constraint, we will be ending up with having to install a sign. And we will go through a few examples showing that, look, it's not necessarily the right solution. There will be other solutions that we should look at that can address the issue, rather than installing a sign. Because once you install a sign, they generally stay there for a long time. I'm not aware of many instances where we remove road signs. So we just got to be careful when we install a sign, and just follow the standards and guideline, which I think I got them here. Oh, sorry, one more good reason that we need to make sure whatever road sign we put out there, and pavement marking as well, are good and, you know, according to standard, is because with the changing in technology, most, if not all, new vehicles now have some sort of capacity to read the road. My car can read the speed limit signs. So we want to make sure whatever we put out there, they are catering for these emerging technology as well. And here are the key standards and guidelines that I hope everyone is aware of. If not, they are there on the screen. And there's a bit of information around it, so you don't need to, I guess, know everything, but hopefully after today, you know where to find them. So we have a suite of the Australian standard AS 1742, which David touched on earlier. It's called a Manual of Traffic Control Devices, and there are 15 parts in there. The next slide will show you what they are. Now, part 2 is the biggest part, and it's got a lot of good information. So for those who are starting or fairly new to the industry, that's probably a good start where you want to have a read. In addition to the Australian standard, each state and territory also have a supplement, we call them. So I assume that some of us have come across those. So those supplements will take precedent when you work in a particular state or territory. And the aim is we try to minimize those supplements because we want to harmonize and, you know, like when you drive from one state to another, you should be seeing the same sign, the same line marking, rather than something different. So hopefully in the near future, we won't have any more supplements. Everything will be an Australian standard. But if there are, then those are the requirements that you need to follow. They take precedent. Austrod also have a number of guides, as we know, and the one that probably has a lot of relevance and relating to the Australian Standard 1742 is the Guide to Traffic Management. So those documents down the screen are, I guess, the go-to if you need any more information and clarification, go to those documents. So I mentioned there the IS 1742 series. There are 15 parts. I won't read them out. I assume that you will have access to this recording, which you can come back and have a look. And yeah, David mentioned that both Rob and I, we are on the MS12 committee, and that's the committee that looks after all these 15 parts. In addition, we're also looking after 1743, which is the sign specifications, and also the 1744, which is the road sign font. We have color-coded some of these standards on the screen. The one that probably you should take note of if you haven't been made aware are the brown ones. So they are the recently published standards. So part 2, we went through a fairly lengthy and detailed update, and it was published a bit more than 12 months ago. So as I mentioned earlier, it has a lot of good information to start off with. Part 10, pedestrian control and protection, that part will be published soon. And I say in the next month or so. So keep an eye out on it. Part 13, local area traffic management, also been recently revised and updated like last year. And then on the screen, there are 3 parts under review. Part 6, service and tourist signs. Part 11, parking controls. So for those who work for local government, you may find that useful and interesting. And then part 14, traffic signals. I put there on the screen the website for Standard, www.standard.org.au, because you as practitioners, you can be involved in the updating process. So as part of the process, Standard Australia will publish the draft document with the changes for public comments. And it usually runs for 9 weeks, which is a decent length of time. So I suggest for those who haven't done so, go to Standard website and register your interest. And I think you will get a newsletter with, you know, whenever these standards are published for public comment, so that you can have a look and provide your input. Yeah, so those are the kind of the first few slides, a very quick overview. Now I will pass on to Rob. So he will go through some of the signing and pavement key principles, and then I will come back. So over to you, Rob, and I will be controlling the PowerPoint, so just tell me when you want to move to the next slide.
All right, I will. So I'll have to behave myself if you've got the control there. That's good. Hello, everybody. Yes, so let's run through some principles that apply to signing and line marking. So we'll have the next one. Thanks, Tuan. So I guess principle number 1, and this was, well, 60 years ago, this was stated by Ron Cumming, was much involved in the human factors side of traffic engineering. And he said the primary aim of all traffic control devices must be to reduce uncertainty. So I think it's a very valuable thing to check back on. I'm about to, I'm considering a sign, I want to install a sign, I'm auditing a sign or a signing scheme or whatever it might be, and just ask yourself, is what is proposed here or exists on the road, is that helping to reduce uncertainty, or is it not? Okay, next. Thanks, Tuan. Next slide, thanks. Yeah, good. All right. Now, reducing uncertainty. Now, here's this is not in Australia. This is in a couple of countries I've been to in recent times, and the photo on the left shows there's a no right turn there, and on the far side it's because it's a one-way. But both those signs are in red. And then we look at country number 2 on the right, and the no left turn and all traffic must turn left are also everything's got red associated with it. And so you sort of ask yourself, now, does that actually make a certain level of sense? And maybe it did and maybe it didn't. But I think there's a lot of stuff in AS 1742 where, whether consciously or unconsciously, the committee over the years has attempted to deal with this issue of reducing uncertainty, and they're trying to apply human factors in a sort of sensible way. So I don't think that we do have in Australia permissive signs that have got red on them. Let's hope not. All right, next one. Thanks, Tuan. All right, now principle number 2 is that there is that we need to understand road users' needs, and in terms of signing, there are 4 steps that drivers go through in relation to signing. And so the first one is to detect the sign. The next one's to read the sign. The third one is to understand the sign. And then finally to act on that sign's message. So under those, there are some dot points. And so let's go through those in terms of principles. Thanks, Tuan. All right. Now, before I do that, I would just say there is a tendency to, with AS 1742, to go and buy part 1. It's got all the pretty pictures of all the signs, and then just apply those to a plan, and everything's wonderful. The only trouble is it doesn't actually tell you what each of those functions is. So don't just buy part 1. Tuan's mentioned part 2 is probably the most important one, but if we're doing speed controls, you'll need part 4. If you're doing street name signs, you'll need part 5, for example. Okay, let's get on to... all right, so principle number 4, we'll call it, and it is this aspect that signs need to be visible. So on the left-hand side here, we've got the sign that's hidden behind the tree foliage. On the right-hand side, we've got a sign that's nice and visible in daylight, but because it's so old, it's actually invisible at night time. Okay, next one. All right, and so you can hide signs behind other signs. That's always a good move. Or on the right-hand side, the form 1 lane sign is not only hidden behind the bus lane sign, but when a bus comes and stops in that bus stop, it's hidden behind the bus. Meanwhile, the drivers over on the right-hand side have got no information. So that was an audit recommendation to put the other form 1 lane sign over on the right-hand side to give the drivers in that lane a 50-50 chance of seeing it. All right, next one. All right, so as well as being seen, part of being seen is there's got to be conspicuous. And so on the left-hand one, can anyone see the zebra crossing sign? Well, no, we're all looking at the scenery. But in fact, it's not a problem there, because we know that zebra crossings are those places on the road system that are got black and white stripes, so you should have no problem seeing it. Down on the bottom right-hand side, we've got a New Zealand no entry sign, and next to it's an American do not enter sign. And so this goes to the middle one of these dot points. The issues with conspicuousness, luminance, got to be bright enough to be seen. The size has got to be big enough to be seen. Edge contrast. So what you've got with the American one is very similar to the Australian one, is you've got good edge contrast because it's got a border against the red. Graphic boldness, we'll have a look at that in a minute. And then it's actually got to be relevant to the task the driver's expecting to do. Thanks, Twan. All right, then it's got to be legible. Now, let's do the easy bit first, the pictures at the bottom. So we're talking about symbol legibility there, that the symbol on the right is going to be much more legible at a distance than the symbol on the left, and that's because it's got that graphic boldness and doesn't have a lot of fussy detail. We look at the photograph, the signs there for the street name signs are in a narrow font, which we would call Series B. And so there's various series lettering, and Series C is wider than that, Series D is wider again, and up it goes. Now, the thing is, it's that the narrower the lettering, the harder it is to read. So it may only be a street name sign, but it'd be much easier to read it if it was the Series D that the standard requires. All right, next. All right, messages, message length and message layout. And this relates to the idea that you've got to be able to read, not only be able to read it, but read it within the time available. So here's a photo Twan took of, so that's not actually a traffic sign on the left. It's like, it's a public notice. I mean, when you get to that sort of thing, it's just a shocker. All right, no one's going to be able to read all that. So that's an extreme example of that. Let's have a look at some more examples here on the next one. All right, so and I suppose if you go to Orbost, plenty of time to read the signs down there, but that's probably not the idea. You don't want to be jamming all that there in the one location and expecting drivers to read it. So keep that in mind. Those are a couple of extreme examples. Let's have a look at the next one. All right, message spacing. All right, my favourite group of signs of all time. I think they've been thinned out a bit. This is up in Parramatta, but there's no way that anyone's going to be able to read all those and act on them within the time available. So we'll talk about spacing of signs a bit more later on. All right, what's the next one? Principle number 8 next is that the sign has to be comprehensible. You know, if the drivers can't comprehend the message, then it's all totally lost. On the top left, we've got, there's the drop-off only up there, but I'm not allowed to enter it. Rightio. The concealed driveway is a hidden driveway. I've got Norwegian friends, and they finally came over last year, drove from Sydney to Melbourne, and about the first question they asked was, what's concealed mean? And I said, oh, it means hidden. And they go, oh, right. So we all assume that everybody knows these terms we use, but we do have to be careful. In the bottom there, we've got a couple of signs that always test very badly. Is that one on the left, is that merging traffic, or is that an added lane? And the no entry sign on the right. So that then raises the issue that signs, if you're going to use symbols, they need to be tested. You know, symbols may, in theory, be easier to notice than word signs, but they're not any better if the symbol is not one that people comprehend. All right, let's have a look at the next one. Okay, now it needs to be unambiguous, the information here. So here's one in Melbourne. It's been up for 20 years or something. And so what does only mean for the left lane, the bottom half there? So left lane, does that mean that the left lane is a trap lane and only goes to those places, or does it mean I can only access those ones from the left-hand side and not somewhere else? That is not unambiguous. And then the top one, CityLink goes to the airport. So is that the same exit as the other one? All right. So I think we get in, it's the issue that we get into designing signs and we forget that the people who need to read and comprehend them are not as familiar as we are when we design them. All right, what's the next one? Okay, I think that sign's still there. The trees are not. That's beside Northeast Link now. But so the question is Simpson Barracks straight ahead? Because that's what the sign looks like it's telling us. And unfortunately, the problem arose because a common correct standard sign wasn't used there. All right, next one. So we're still on unambiguous. All right. So on the left here, we've got one of those silly signs that I hope you never, ever have the opportunity to install, which is drive safely. And I don't know anyone who's started their day and said, I must drive unsafely today. But it's the sign on the right there. So it's been beautifully centered, but in fact, that design is not really helpful because the arrow under Clyde North and the arrow under Cranbourne East, if you're glancing at them, and remember the drivers only glance at signs for something in the order of a second, and they've got to get the information that they need. The photo on the right is just a Photoshop rehash of that to show that the sort of thing that should be used. So we put our right-hand arrows on the right-hand side, we put our left-hand arrows on the left-hand side, and it's not just because they look pretty or something like that. It's so that when people see them, they can quickly recognise the direction they've got to move to. All right, let's have a look at principle number 10. Okay, the message, the information has to be precise. Now here's a median turning lane on a road that's got trams going up the median, and so you arrive and there's a red U-turn signal, and then it recognises you're there. It brings up a red T for the trams, and then you get the orange, the yellow U-turn signal, then it blanks out. And so the signs say give way to trams. Well, that's always a good idea at any time. Then we've got one vehicle at a time. That's probably not to block the trams, and stop here on red arrow, which I've already done. All right, so is there any message that's missing there? What about the message that when you get over to the other carriageway, you're going to have to give way because there's oncoming traffic? All right, nothing at all about that somewhat safety critical message. It could be a little more precise as to what needs to be done. All right, what's next? Okay, and then it's got to be credible. The message has got to be credible, and so here I am poking fun at our friends in Canada. We've got a zebra crossing near a school. There's a school behind those tall trees, and we've got a maximum of 30 kilometres an hour, not miles an hour, kilometres an hour from all the time from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m, Monday to Friday for 3/4 of the year. All right, so you look at the road environment there, and it's quite some distance outside of town, and who's going to be going along there at 30 k's unless they're expecting someone to enforce it? All the rest of the time, it's not going to happen, is it? Really doesn't have any credibility. But anyway, having poked fun at the Canadians, let's poke fun at ourselves now on the next slide. All right, and Tuan will be talking about this as well. Stop signs where you don't need us to stop, that you need to give, all you need to do is give way, really lacks any credibility. If we look at the trial and go through the what's in the standard about this, but there's clearly plenty of visibility there, and the point is that stop signs are not safer than give way signs, so no credibility. All right, what have we got next? All right, so the information, it's always handy if the information is correct. And another one Tuan picked up in Brisbane. So on the upper photo, we've got clearance ahead, 5 metres, and then just beyond it, there's clearance 5.2 metres. So which one of those is correct? I would also point out the word ahead. Do we really need ahead there? Because that's warning sign colours, and the warnings are all about something that's ahead of you. So it probably could have had clearance and whatever the correct number is in larger letters in that space. Okay, next one. All right, one of my favourites in Melbourne is here, turning into the Chandler Highway off Heidelberg Road, and there's a right turn, curiously designed, but there's a right turn slot into Coat Avenue just before it, and then you've got to go around the back of that to get into Kew. But the sign actually points you into the wrong right turn slot. Now, I did actually say to the project people there, no, that's not how you do it, and here's a sketch of how you did do it, but it obviously got lost in the ether because it never happened. So that's now, that because that issue has come up here. Let's go to the next slide, actually. Because that issue has come up here, and it had also come up somewhere else that I'd worked down in Glen Ira. I developed this sign, and then it's been gone through the process with the committee. So if you've got a situation like that, now this is what you do. Now the interesting thing about this sign is it's the only sign where the arrow is on the side of the sign that is not, it's pointing away from that side of the sign. So this is going to be the only example, and that's because you've got to get yourself around the end of that at that island. All right, now let's have a look at the next one. And it encouraged me that someone's obviously read the standard but hasn't quite applied it in the correct way. So we've got that sign on the top there to Salandra Boulevard, and that just happens to be the one that's up at the traffic signals, and not the next one. So somewhat confusing there. But at least looks like they've been looking at the standard, so it's a good start. Let's have a look at the next one. All right, just got a couple left now of these principles, and the principle 13 is it really appropriate for the purpose? And so just going through these dot points. Is the purpose of the sign clear? Does it actually fulfill that purpose? Is the sign needed? If it's a warning sign, do you need it, or can you actually see the hazard already? If it's a regulatory sign, is the regulatory requirement, it might be like no stopping or something like that. Does the sign increase certainty or sufficiently reduce uncertainty? That's an important one, going back to that principle number 1. Will it command respect, or is it likely to be ignored? Any adverse consequences likely? So just check, and that's, phone a friend or something, and or see how someone who's not an engineer might respond to it, and see if there's any adverse consequences. And then, does it meet all the previously discussed requirements that we've been talking about? All right. And then getting close to the end, it's got to be timely. So we've seen this collection of signs before, and in amongst them, there's a left lane ends merge right, which should be located, is 100 metres, some distance back before a merge happens. And then there's a Form 3 lane sign getting near the end of the thing. So completely too late for the purpose that they're intended for. So we need to be getting information in a timely manner. Okay, next one. Thanks, Tuan. All right, and then we get some sort of various mixes of issues, things being timely, and also the message links. So here we've got someone's written the Gettysburg Address on 2 panels on a variable message sign. And so you're not going to be able to read all that in the time available. And who knows whether it's in time for you to act on it as well. All right. Timely. So timely, as well as that issue about timely, the other one is don't put the example here is about this warning sign for the give way ahead. Don't put a sign so far in advance that by the time someone needs to respond to it, it's actually gone out of short-term memory and they can't remember. In this situation, there's an intersection that requires a give way, but before that, there's a railway level crossing, and so by the time someone's dealt with the level crossing, they've probably forgotten that the give way condition up there, and that actually happened to be a site of a serious or a couple of serious crashes. So these, do have safety issues about them. All right, so what this is saying to us with all these various principles is that underlying it all is the need to understand road users' needs. And so this goes under the general heading of human factors. So it is very important to have some appreciation of how road users, and we've talked here just about drivers, but it's going to apply to pedestrians and to riders as well as drivers. All right, so what have we got next? Yes, but wait, there's more. So as well as those issues, then we then get back to the issue about complying with the AS 1742, the MUTCD in the jargon. And so this photo Twan's taken here of a crossroad warning sign on the approach to a give way sign. Now that's absolute no-no, and it's been an absolute no-no since the 1980s in the standard. And it used to be, we used to have give way to the right and everywhere, and I'm talking about 50 years ago, 60 years ago, and no control of intersections. And that's when crossroad warning signs were put in. So there's probably been a crossroad warning sign here for 50 years, but it's the wrong sign because now our intersection direction signs have arrows on them. And so this type of sign, the design's not right, but let's ignore that for the moment. But this type of sign about crossroad warning really must only ever be put on the road that's got the priority. If you've got a sign for the minor leg, it's shown there on the right. All right, next one here. So then on the right, we've got the correct sign, and on the left, we've got someone's idea of what we ought to do. So if you've got people making your signs in your workshop and they're doing these sort of things, it's probably time to reflect on the importance of signing and take some other action. All right, and so consistent. Down in the bottom left, we've got a 40k sign. Above it, we've got one sign workshop's idea of what a 40k speed limit sign looks like. It's not really professional, is it? The same people came up with the bicycle sign there. Now that's going to be harder to see at a distance from the standard symbol. And then we've got the collection of various parking control signs that have got some. I won't go into the details, but there's errors in all of those. And so by reading part 11 of AS 1742, you'll be able to work out what those are. All right, and getting close to the end here with these principles, and so and again, Twan found, what was this, 10 or 11 variations of a koala sign on the internet, and the point with this is all those detailed differences do not make any difference whatsoever. You get to a point with a lot of these and you just pick one sign. It may not be the best sign, but if you get 80% of people understanding what it is, then you just stick with the one sign. And the parking control sign down the bottom right is another example. I remember in the committee back in the 80s, we had great discussion about, it should be P 15 minutes, it should be quarter P. And then eventually human factors guy who was on the committee at the time, he said, look, I don't think it matters. And well, that shut up the discussion, and we tossed a coin and went for quarter P. And it doesn't matter, all right? The punters out there are not going to know the difference between P 15 minutes and quarter P, so just go for the standard one. All right, so that's really summing up the principles, and now we'll go through a few topics that might be of interest, and we might spend a little more time on those.
Thank you, Rob. Thanks very much for that. And I just go back to this slide because it might not be surprising, but this standard koala sign, I've been receiving calls from people saying that why this koala only has 3 legs. So it doesn't matter. And also some of these koalas simple, I'm not even sure they are koalas. They've got very long arms. So there you go. Okay, so we thought that we will go through a couple of other topics that might be of your interest. The first one is the intersection control. So we all know that a road will intersect with another road. And there are 3 key intersection controls. They can either be controlled by signs, or it's a roundabout, or traffic signals. We won't go into the traffic signals. But the key thing that I feel that people still kind of make mistakes out there, and I will go through an example in a minute, is the use of give way and stop signs. So on the screen there, that's the guidelines for using give way sign. One thing to note is give way sign, you don't generally need it at T intersections. And look, we make mistake, and I'm happy to admit a mistake I made a number of years ago when I was a younger traffic engineer. I thought that you need a give way sign at T intersections, and I kind of told our depot people at council, let's put them in. And they didn't, and it was a bit embarrassing when I told a local resident that, you know, they will get a give way sign, but they didn't. So generally, you don't need one for T intersection, because the T intersection rule apply. You got to stop and give way. And you only use a stop sign when the intersection has a substandard sight distance. And the next slide, we will show how you work that out. But before I do that, the bottom right picture here is a site in Victoria, and if you can see it, I think the first thing you will notice is probably a roundabout there. Well, it is not a roundabout. It is a give way sign, and you got a stop sign, a give way sign, and there have been a few crashes because people thought that it is a roundabout. So the use of sign control is important. Make sure you use the right sign for the right purpose. But this is the stop sign warrant. So you only need to use a stop sign in this circumstance. And I won't go to the detail. You can go to clause 2.5.3 for information. But generally, depending on the speed of the major road, you do this assessment. And Rob touched on this earlier, because we don't want to use the stop sign where it is not needed. It will dilute the importance of the sign. People will start ignoring it. And then when it is really critical that people must stop, they may not stop, and that would lead to a consequence or a situation we don't want to be in.
Yeah. And I'd just add in there, Tuan, the diagram says major road and minor road. That's nothing to do with its functional classification. That's simply to do with which one has got the priority or the right of way through the intersection, and which one has to give way.
Yes, that's correct. Thanks, Rob. Well, this is an example, and actually I should have mentioned that in this presentation we have got a few examples, good and bad. If by chance you were involved with or know of these sites, it's not a criticism of yourself or the team. It is really for, you know, for us to look and learn and don't make the same mistake. And as we know, you know, with this sort of infrastructure, we don't have a lot of budget to fix them. So we just try to get it right the first time, that's all. So don't take it personal. It is purely for education purposes. Well, this is an example of a cross intersection that I was involved with quite recently. And at this cross intersection is a local road intersection. There were 3 casualty crashes in the last 5 years. So council was looking at and just trying to see what can be done. A road safety audit was carried out, and one of the recommendations was to change the give way sign to stop signs. Now, in this case, when council received the recommendation, they weren't sure whether they should do that, so I commended them for that, and they actually rang me up to say, Tuan, what do you think? And look, I went to the basic. I did a sight distance check to see whether it's sufficient or not, and you can see there I did a rough check, and you can do it different ways, but I did a rough check, and look, there's plenty of sight distance, you know, like you don't need to change the give way to stop sign. So to address the issue, because at the intersection, because of the casualty crashes, the local resident was kind of adamant that, oh, we want the stop sign. But you need to kind of look into it a bit more to understand the underlying issue. So in this case, if you look at this approach, it could be that people mistaking it as, you know, you have the priority when you approach this intersection. You cannot kind of have a line of vision that might lead you to believe that you can just keep going straight, and maybe that's why people fail to give way. And to address that issue, instead of changing the give way sign to stop sign, which you know, there's no study showing that it will improve safety. But perhaps in this case, I suggested to council that maybe you can duplicate the give way sign, for example, have another one on the right-hand side, or maybe have an advanced give way ahead sign just before the intersection to tell people that, look, you are coming to a give way control. And if you have a bit more budget, then maybe you can do other things like, you know, installing a splitter island and all those sort of things, which will be a lot more effective than replacing the give way sign with a stop sign. So I thought I'd share that example. Roundabout, look, we all know what roundabouts are. Interestingly, we still see mistakes being made in terms of using the sign at the wrong location. So this is a fairly old picture, but the one on the left, they're showing the regulatory roundabout sign installed on the island, which is not correct. It should be on the approach. And then here on the right-hand side, they use a warning roundabout sign instead of a regulatory sign. So watch out for those things. In this case, the roundabout sign is a regulatory sign, so you want to make sure that it is used and installed correctly. Another photo that I took last year, I guess in this case, for me, the thing that I'm a bit kind of uncomfortable, well, it's not kind of, you know, the end of the world, but, you know, as a driver, you can clearly see the roundabout in front of you. So the roundabout warning sign in this case is probably not needed. I have seen design drawings of roundabout that just have the roundabout ahead sign as a default, and I kind of told the design that, look, you don't need it unless you know, for a reason as you specify in Standard Australia. It is not a default warning sign. If people see the roundabout, you don't need to tell people about it. The next topic is the horizontal curve issue. We do have curve out there on our road network, and we need to warn motorists of the risks, and they need to slow down. And to treat the horizontal curves, you can use guideposts, RRPMs, warning sign with an advisory speed limit sign underneath, or curve alignment markers, CAMs. So in this case, we can see the guideposts, the CAMs in yellow, and also the warning sign. At this particular site, it was put on a red background because of a fatality, unfortunately, at this bend. So it was kind of, I need to emphasize the risk. But yeah, and then the thing is, some people get confused, the CAMs with the hazard markers, I found. So hazard marker, as you can see down the screen, need to tell people that there is a hazard along the road. such as, there's a rod narrowing, there's a curve outstand in this case. And let's look at the next slide. And this is what I see out there in the rod network. So again, don't be offended if you were involved in this sort of work. But, the contractor may make a mistake. They think that all the signs are the same. In this case, it appears that these three hazard markers should be cams because there's a curve. And the one here is correct because it's showing the island. It's a hazard. But it's not the best design, is that as a driver, you approach, you see a kind of a chevron point to the left and then one point to the right. It's probably not the best design apart from using the wrong sign. Similarly, another location where it appears that there is a power pole and there's a clearway sign on top of it. And for whatever reason, the engineer feel that we need to highlight that there's a risk, a hazard. But instead of using the white background sign, they use a cam sign, which is incorrect. So this sort of thing, I do see them around and just want to make sure the correct sign is used.
And I think this is a good example as well, isn't it, Tuan, about the road is curving around to the right, and so someone might say, oh, okay, well, a curve alignment marker is appropriate there. But one of the things with curve alignment markers is you need to use a minimum of 3, I think it is, of them, and not just a single one.
Yes, that's correct. Thanks for that, Rob. Okay, next topic, which have a few slides which may have your interest, is the pedestrian facilities. So Australian Standard 1742 Part 10 has information about pedestrian controls. And this part will be published very soon. In the next few weeks is what we are understanding from Standard Australia. The updated version has some additional information about pedestrian facility, pedestrian crossings. I just want to make a point that, nowadays with pedestrian crossing, we see a lot of wombat crossing, which is a zebra crossing with a raised pavement, which is much better than the standard zebra crossing because people tend to slow down when they approach the wombat crossing. However, we're going to make sure that we use the correct sign and pavement marking. And actually, before I show an example, I have this slide showing an example of one of the changes that will be in Part 10, which will be published soon, which is we have now got a new sign for children crossing. So at the moment, the sign is on the right-hand side there, the standard children ahead and crossing ahead supplementary sign. We kind of combine and make it a slightly different version to advise motorists that it is a school crossing, either ahead or on the side road. So this is one of the examples of the changes that are coming up in Part 10.
Sorry, Tuan, and I'd just like to emphasise again that this change sign was tested, so the symbol there, and people actually did understand that that was children crossing there rather than just children in the area. And it also removing the crossing ahead's subplate from underneath it allows us to use the arrows on the sign also, rather than having to put yet another plate underneath it if it's in a side street.
Yes, and it is to, I guess, thinking about the road user experience and making it simpler for them to comprehend the sign and all that, isn't it? Well, this is an example where I stopped and I took a photo because I wasn't sure whether it is a pedestrian crossing or not. The line marking certainly is for a road hump, but for some reason, this is a private car park, but I put in the walking leg sign. It's not complying, and look, most of the time people probably stop and give way to pedestrians. But if something did happen, I guess, go to court, and if it's not complying, it could be a bit of an issue for whoever installing these things.
So and it's a probably good example too, just to say that it was brought into line with what was required, and they put the zebra stripes across, and it actually became a proper zebra crossing or pedestrian crossing, and you'd have the walking leg signs there. What the new Part 10 is saying, that all the other signs, like warning about a hump, that sort of thing, they're all, if you're going to use them, they've got to be somewhere else. The only signs at the zebra crossing is the walking leg sign, and then Tuan in a couple of minutes will show you another type of crossing. And once again, if you're needing to warn about the hump, that's got to be done in advance, and often it's simply not needed. But the idea is that at the crossing location, the only signs that are to be put there are the control signs.
Yes, that's correct. Well, this is another example of a photo I took. And again, it's, I guess, within a private car park. However, we can see here, in this case, I've got some potable crossing with the stripe, but there's no walking leg sign. So I guess, you know, nobody's going to do it. Like you see a pedestrian there, you're not going to run them over. But technically, it's probably not a legal crossing because there's no walking leg sign. So just got to be mindful of what we put out there, I guess. And this is another the upcoming change as part of Part 10, actually, because it's to use for share use path. And on the screen you can see is what will be the new standard to sign these crossings. So as an example, you got a slip lane there, and this is going to be a share use crossing for both pedestrian and cyclists. The pavement will be in yellow, and then the sign will be the giveaway sign with the symbol of the pedestrian and bicycle underneath. Make it clear and clean, easy for people to understand, that kind of thing.
So yeah, and there was an awful lot, as Tuan will agree, there was an awful lot of discussion in the committee about how we deal with these, because the road rules allow road authorities to put up a giveaway sign in a situation where you want drivers to give way to pedestrians. So it might be where there's a shared path goes across a local street or something like that. And so what we've tried to do is distinguish the use of giveaway signs at road intersections with giveaway signs at locations where bicycle path or shared path is crossing. So so that's the big difference. In terms of the road rules, the legal device is still the give way sign, but what we're saying is so that and especially on slip lanes, so that people understand that the give way sign is actually applying to something before you get to the give way line up at the end of the slip lane. There's greater emphasis now.
Absolutely. And look, I have this slide here about the sign color, because for me it's a bit of a worrying trend. So we apart from the standard, yellow color and all that sign shading material, we also have fluorescent yellow green, and they must or should only be used, well, actually they must, I think, only be used for the protection of pedestrians. And then fluorescent orange is for roadwork signs, and fluorescent yellow also a roadwork sign, route numbering, that kind of thing. But yeah, look, the thing that I found interesting lately is the use of fluorescent yellow-green. I've seen them on warning signs, certainly across Melbourne. The picture on the right-hand side there is in Sydney as well. So I don't know, there might be a bit of a I don't know, I force that changing this sort of sign from yellow to fluorescent yellow, green. It is not the right use. We should not use it. We must only keep them for pedestrian related protection sign, because once you use this color for every sign, and I guess you lose that emphasis on pedestrian controls. So for those who work this area, just keep an eye on this and use the right color for the sign. Okay, now warning sign. I think Rob would have jumped in and talk a bit about warning sign, Rob.
All right. Yeah, so let's just have a look at a few other issues in relation to warning signs, and we'll have a look at. So I think the first thing is that the warning signs. Well, a large number of them are in part 2. We'll look at distances and where you should be locating them, and when to use them, and then there's a special intersection treatment. So the first thing is about the actual purpose of warning signs, and so here's an example, the photo on the left that I discovered in an audit of a new project, and the signing plan had this on it, and they dutifully installed it. And the top sign says Ford, and the second sign says floodway. Well, they are two completely different beasts, and they're explained in part 2. And on the right-hand side here, underneath the sign Ford, it says the Ford sign shall be used to warn of a Ford as specified in clause such and such, and same with the floodway sign. You go to the specific clause in part 2 and it tells you where you use it. And so obviously you can't have both those things happening at the same time. So I guess this is just an example to say the details are in the standard, and sometimes you'll go, oh, right, I've got the diagram there. Now it's referring me to a clause, and the clause might say, oh, except for some other clause. Well, you know, we all got here via a university degree or something very similar. So I think this is the time to apply it and read the details in the standard, because this is what we're trying to create is out on the road network is a simple and consistent system for the road users. And sometimes we've got to deal with, you know, as with any other engineering area, we've got to deal with a level of detail so that we can apply these things in a consistent way, so the road users don't have to try and sort things out for themselves. All right, so that's that one. And now let's have a look at distances. And of course, the photo on the bottom left, no one worried about distances there. It was just a case of sticking another sign in between the other ones. But you'll see in part 2, AS 1742 part 2, in Appendix D, there's this table D.1, and it gives you the distances for putting warning signs in advance of a hazard or an action point. And so the main one is distance A, and so the green items there show that in the table show that we've split this up into locations where you must or you may need to stop, locations where a significant speed reduction is required, and then locations where there's a low to moderate speed reduction required. And so there are these different distances depending on the speed of the road. Now, it used to be that there was only one dimension A, but there was certainly a lot of feedback happening. I'm talking about 20 years ago, that a lot of these signs were put in where there wasn't much speed reduction required. They were being located far too far in advance. So that's where you find that information. So the most important bit is dimension A, and then if you need to put a second sign in, you go further back up the road from the way you're approaching, and there's dimension B, which is either 50, 60 or 70 metres. And And so you space them out. And the idea with spacing them out is it gives people time to read the information on each side. And that's why you really don't, unless there's a combined sign assembly in the standard, which says you put this on the one post, and the picture shows one of the examples there, left lane ends merge right. So that's a sign assembly that is standalone, but you don't put two signs on the same post because they will both need to be thought about. All right, we got next. Oh yeah, so when to use them. So what we're trying to do is provide advice to road users, whether it's pedestrians, cyclists, motorcyclists, drivers. We're trying to provide them with information that allows them to reduce their uncertainty, eliminate uncertainty, that sort of thing. So if you do need to warn about something, do warn about it. The standard signs to use and locate them at a standard distance. But the second half of this slide, don't use them when they're not needed. Tuan showed the photo of the roundabout, and you'd probably see the roundabout before you saw the roundabout warning sign. Really don't need it. So avoid stating the obvious, if it's so obvious that that's what's needed, because if you keep putting up signs, it's just sign clutter. People will ignore it. So it's important to avoid sign clutter, and also avoid making decisions based on risk aversion. I'll just put the sign in just in case, that sort of approach. So let's have a look at a couple of examples with this in the next slide. And so here's an example of a single lane bridge, and it's got some traffic signal control on it. And so there's the warning sign for the traffic signals, and then you come back a distance B, 50, 60 or 70 meters, and there's the one lane bridge sign. And so there's a note beside the traffic signals warning sign, which is note 5. And if we look at note 5, it says used only if sight distance to the signals is less than the lower limit for dimension A. So what it's saying is you actually need to go out and check the sight distance, because if you can see the signals, then you don't need to put the sign there. All right. Yeah, the next one is, let's have a look at the next, that's this one. So what's happened is, and there's been this sort of view in the committee that, or concern rather, that a number of practitioners look at the diagrams or the layout diagrams in the standard and go, right, that's what we've got. And in this case, it's, we've got a left turn slip lane on and there's a priority path there. So, okay, here's all the signs. And you'll notice the arrow on the diagram points to, well, almost points to it. Note 3, there's a sign down at the bottom, and that note 3 is for a warning sign. And so note 3 says warning sign this and warning sign that assembly is used in advance of the crossing where permitted by clause such and such. If required, this certain sign is located here. Now, if you go to the clause, it says only use it if you need to. And so we've sort of got to the situation in the committee where we're leaving signs off and just referring to them in notes because of concern that someone's got to look at the diagram and they're going to go and use that sign whether it's warranted or not. In this example, if you can see that give way sign with the pedestrian bicycle plate underneath it, if you can see that in advance in sufficient time, then there's no need to put the warning sign. And again, that's a raised treatment. There is no absolute requirement to warn about that raised treatment with a hump warning sign. So if you can see that it's a hump warning sign, or if you're anticipating, and particularly in this situation where the people are, it's a slip lane and people are expecting to have to give way at the end of it, so they're going to be travelling or reducing their speed. So if people can then see the piano keys pavement marking on the ramp, then there's no need to even warn about the that raised pavement, because people can see it. I think there was, well, way back in my early days on the committee, there was concern about road humps, and we needed to sign every road hump, and because they were at the time a fairly new device. But these days there are road humps and raised pavements everywhere, and so there's an expectation in certain environments, and the slip lane would be one of them, that you'll see them. So you're going to have to use your engineering judgment and use them when needed. All right, Twan. So we've got quite a few questions, so I'll try and leave some time to answer some of these questions as well. Just alert you to Appendix I in Part 2, where you've got a situation where the priority either turns left or curves left at an intersection. There, for those of you in road authorities, you do really need to apply this and get out and treat all your intersections that have this issue. So we'll leave it at that and enjoy reading Appendix I. All right, direction signs quickly. Okay, so Part 15, and so it's the drafting group leader for this one, which was published just before COVID hit. And so it's important to get the correct information, use the correct panels, and make sure that the elements are well spaced and proportional within the sign, and keep the message simple. All right, it's very easy, as we're about to see, that it's very easy to complicate things. All right, so good luck on the when you're heading towards East Parade in Perth. About what do all those arrows mean? I don't know. I'm never going to read that by the time I get there. Complicated on the right-hand side, complicated double roundabout there, and no more complicated than the advanced sign. I'm not going to remember which lane I need to, and the other thing is it doesn't tell me which lane I need to be in to start with. So a bit hard. All right, what's next? Okay, airport signs, here we go. Because the aeroplane symbol is almost like an arrow, it's important to get it oriented the correct way. So, and it, on the one on the left, I think just straight ahead would probably have worked, or pointing to the left. The one on the right-hand photo, probably pointing to the right. All right. So, and there are probably worse examples around the system. So, all right, what's next? And here's ones that have done it correctly. We've got an exit here in the left-hand photo, an exit on the left, so the aeroplane's angled to the left, and again the same in the right-hand one. Okay. All right, and now horror of all horrors is driving towards Melbourne Airport. So this is just a complete shocker. Doesn't conform with the standard, and apart from that, it doesn't work. So interestingly, the sign on the left, as Twan's advised me, has been replaced by the sign on the top right, and I just, what? I have no idea what that's trying to tell me. It is just a horror. And then that's followed by the one on the bottom left. So, you can't be trying to put all this information in one location. It is simply not going to work. And my phone number's at the end of all these slides. So, and so is Twan. So, give us a call. All right, what's next? Parking signs. Just make the point that Part 11 with parking signs is it's got more design detail in it than most of the other ones. Most of the design detail is in the 1743 for most signs, but if you're designing parking control signs, you need to get into the Part 11. Now that's currently being reviewed, so if you, and I'm the drafting leader on that, so if you've got any comments on parking signs, send me a line and we'll consider it in the working group. All right, and so next one's just some examples of horror stories. All right, I think the less time we spend on that, the better. Okay, good. And just to say, so the current review, we're looking at various things. We've got to introduce the symbol for electric vehicle parking. We're going to be looking at parking on the verge, whether that symbol is going to be well, it will be tested, whether it's successful in the testing, and parking for motorcycles or motorbikes, as they're called in the road rules. All right, so I think that's it. Tuan, you want to wrap up with this bit and then we'll get into some questions?
Yes, that's right. Thanks, Rob. Yeah, look, I hope that what Rob and I has gone through is, not everything is quite a big area, but it gave you a bit of information and a bit of a taste of some of those things that could have happened out there. There are help available. That's the good thing. So certainly Rob has got a website. He's got a couple of good documents there that you can download for free. So feel free to go to Rob's website and look at those documents, which cover the things that we talked about today and more. At Step System Solution, we also have training workshops on this topic called Traffic Engineering Fundamental Science Online. So go to our website for more information. And look, Rob and I are here. On the screen is our contacts. Feel free to drop us a line. And we kind of, here to help and making sure we're doing the right thing for motorists and everyone else. Yeah, I think that's the last one. And in the last kind of 10 minutes, Rob and David, I've been attempting to answer a number of questions. For those who don't know, on my screen, I can see 3 tabs. So there's 6 open questions, 12 answered questions. So for those who raised questions in the past, I have attempted to answer them. Yeah, David, do we go through the rest of the question now, or I'm happy to do that.
Yes, I think it's worth discussing some of those questions. There's a lot of questions there that are fairly detailed, and Tuan's tried to answer those. And if we can't get to all of them, we can send you an email after the session's finished. Yeah. But I wonder whether both of you can comment on the questions from Don and Daniel about multilingual signs and using Indigenous names for places.
Not in 10 minutes.
For instance,
I think the thing is that there's been bilingual signs in other countries, and so it does depend on the design. You need to be able to distinguish them separately. You might have them on separate signs. You might have them indented for one language and not for the other. Things like that. So it'll depend on the details of how it might be done. But it's a policy issue as to whether it happens or not.
But isn't the danger about making the signs far too complicated if they have 2 languages on them? Like, would you have a stop sign with the word stop and then the word stop in another language on the same sign?
Yeah, everyone knows it's a stop sign. But I mean, I think there's some horror stuff I've seen in Scotland where they've got two languages. There's some great stuff in Morocco where they seem to have dealt with it very well over there. So there's lessons around the world. I know in New Zealand they're looking to do some bilingual signs. As I say, it really does depend on the details. Otherwise, you're going to get yourself into all sorts of strife. So plenty of discussion for that at a later date. Now, I can see some other questions from the Q&A. We've got Janet saying, please don't allow installation of verge parking signs, as verges are not allowed for parking. One of the questions is, what's the definition of a verge? Can we use that sign to mean something that's not a nature strip? That's one of the issues we've got to deal with. But it's this is an issue that's been dealt with to some extent in Perth, but not anywhere else in Australia. So take your point there. Nick, will verge parking signs be offset? Okay, all right. So a similar issue. Deborah's mentioned about WorkSafe often requiring signs and line marking treatments that don't comply with AS 1742. All right, well, I guess that's it. That's fine until something goes wrong, isn't it? And it's just unfortunate that WorkSafe in Victoria are not playing ball there, or thinking that their ideas on signs are more important than tried and tested approaches. Chris comments that pedestrian crossings, that zebra crossings, are often painted in yellow, in which case they're not legal, and that is quite correct. As far as I think that's a road rules issue rather than a standards issue as well, or they're both. Now, there was also one that's disappeared from my screen, but we had a question from Hassan, I think.
They are probably in the answer tab, Rob. If you click on the answer, so I've been trying to respond to some of the questions. If you click on the answer, yeah, there's
all right. But the question, there we go, good. So the question was, what about stop signs on a curved road? Well, it's a visibility issue. So the visibility warrants apply to a curved road as much as a straight road. So you simply apply that warrant. And the point about stop signs and give way signs, and you can get this on my document on my website, is that stop signs aren't safer than give way signs, and there's nothing in the road rules to tell drivers that they can't stop at a give way sign. And in fact, some surveys I've done over the years, more people will stop at give way signs than stop at unwarranted stop signs. So I wouldn't be, I wouldn't be thinking that simply because you put a stop sign up, people are going to stop there. All right.
I just want to say that there's been a few questions about the verge parking that we are considering. So just want to make that, just want to make a comment that this is an idea, a proposal that Standard Australia is still going through, and for the verge parking, there will be some changes in the road rules required to make it legal, not legal, that kind of thing. And actually, I'm going to have a meeting with the road rules in a few weeks to talk about these sort of issues. So there will be more that needs to be done to support the change.
But by all means, email me, rob@robmorgan.com.au. Just email me and I'll bring it to the attention of the working group.
Maybe we could return to David Harris's very first question about automated vehicles. What do you think needs to change his question was about line marking, but maybe you can comment on signs as well, about how things should change as this new technology starts rolling out.
Good. Over to you, Tuan.
Sorry, I can't miss that, David. Can you repeat it? Because I was looking at the question at the screen. Sorry.
Yeah, look, I didn't need you to necessarily read his question again, but the question about automated vehicles, and particularly things like lane keeping advice, making sure that the lanes are very clear and where the lanes are marked. It might be more of an issue regarding maintenance rather than the actual design in the first place. But are there any areas where you can see changes in the design of things in order to make more allowance for automated vehicles into the future?
Yes, I believe so. I think we are generally quite good because I think about 6 months ago, Australia, our 1742 series actually was kind of being adopted by the United Nations as one of the standards that can be used to harmonize all the science and line marking to cater for autonomous vehicle. So this, I guess, emphasized even more about the importance of practitioners, which a lot of us are, making sure that whenever you do the work out there, you comply with the standards. In my working life, I certainly have talked to the car manufacturing industry, and the first thing they always say is, you know, make sure whatever we put out there is consistent. Because they're not going to be able to design a system that you know can interpret different things. It will be confused to the system, that kind of thing. So I think we are pretty good, but there's still room for improvement. The point is, let's make sure we do things in a consistent, harmonized way out there, so that these vehicles, which is out there on the road, can read and understand them. Does it answer the question, David? And actually, maybe can I add that my car has a bit of that ability. It's got a camera, and I did try it a few times on regional road in Victoria. And when it comes to an area where the line marking is faded or whatever, I can feel that the car got confused. It doesn't know what to do, and I have to quickly kind of grab the steering wheel and control it. So it can have some safety implications.
Yep, absolutely. You might remember that I raised some questions with the department about 6 signs down on the Mornington Peninsula, which were laying flat on the ground for over a year. And I went down there the other day, and they've all been cleaned up, but they haven't been replaced. So in view of the fact that obviously the maintenance budgets are very slim, are there any things we can do to actually reduce the number of signs we put in the first place? And maybe GPS is another reason why some of the signs might be less important than they were before.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, look, the maintenance budget has always under pressure, in particular Victoria, from what I know. Look, GPS does help, and I understand that most new cars relying on both GPS, you know, whatever they've got and whatever the car can see as well. So it's a combination of both.
I think it's an interesting perspective, though, that we're interested to make sure that autonomous cars can read signs, but you know, rather than the ability, you know, beforehand for humans to be able to read them. So perhaps if we can get them consistent for humans, we'll have solved the problem for autonomous vehicles.
That's a good point. Look, we're right on 6 o'clock, so I'll bring things to a close. There are still quite a few discussions and questions there, which if we haven't answered through the Q&A panel, we might try and get an answer to you as well. So thank you to both of our speakers, to Rob and Tuan, for taking us through a lot of the important principles of signing and what's happening with the new standards that are under review and coming out soon. We've also got another webinar coming up in November, the 13th of November, about the parking standards. So this is more to do with the design of parking bays rather than the signing to go with parking. But that's also something that should be of considerable interest, particularly to people in local government. So I look forward to seeing you then, if not before. So I'll draw everything to a close and thank you for attending.
Thank you.